never loved Final Fantasy that much. I've always respected it. So this is not Final Fantasy. This is Chrono Trigger.
Oh, okay.
I love Chrono Trigger.
No surprise.
You zigged.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
what I liked about this, and I didn't play it when it first came out. I played it, I want to say 2013 on my Vita.
Holy cow.
Oh, that's
yeah, for the first time.
yeah,
Wait,
that's
on Vita,
really
so
far
you,
from
so
when
you
it came
played
out.
the PlayStation 1 like
Yeah, the PlayStation one with the terrible load times.
Oof. But also the cool cutscenes.
Yeah, cool cutscenes. What I liked about it was even playing it years after it came out, it felt very subversive. Like the first half of the game is a little bit sluggish, but then you get to the part where, and I come from a text adventure background and like branching path stuff, and so when that game gets to the point where you can just, it throws everything out the window and there's so many options and so many paths you can go down. Like the idea that you can, the protagonist dies at one point. Like
Spoilers.
and then you can spend the whole game not reviving him, like, and just play as like one of the other party members. Like that is a choice you can make. And that's madness. I love that. I love that sort of thing. And they're, all the endings and whatnot. I just love the branching pathiness of it. Because the reason I went back and played it is because apparently it was a big influence on my number one pick.
Oh, don't spoil it.
I'm not.
Whoa.
I'm not. But yeah, that's pretty much my reason. Is I just love how zany that game is, even today. Like it just feels so strange to play it and see how all over the place it is.
And in the same vein as Mass Effect 1, at least what I brought up earlier, is it's also amazing to just look back and say like, oh, of course, Chrono Trigger, but like that is a bizarre concept and a bizarre new world that Squaresoft put together there, composed of a lot of Dream Team talent from that Super Nintendo era, all fusing together.
And like the artist for Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball,
course.
like what? Sure,
what makes
let's
it
go
great.
with this.
Yeah, it's got what Toriyama did like art for it.
Yeah.
Sakaguchi was like one of the lead
Producers, I believe. Yeah.
And then Uematsu's music.
Well, technically,
Or some of
Mitsuda.
it.
Yeah.
Well, no,
so-
Mitsuda did some of it also.
Right, so it seemed like, I think the story is Uematsu started it, and then I forget if he got sick or was pulled off to another project, and then Mitsuda did a bulk of the composition of that
Yeah.
game, which is still one of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to say that like the main theme with like the drum heavy theme for like battle when they're always going into battle is like my favorite video game soundtrack from that, or track from that era.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you have to go Frog's theme. I'm sorry, that's the incorrect choice.
No.
We're gonna have to kick
Maybe
you out, Jamie.
maybe controversial. I think Chrono Cross's soundtrack is better than Chrono
I agree.
Trigger's.
I agree.
Ooh,
And
boy.
that's
You agree
pure
that it's
Mitsuda,
controversial,
baby.
or
No, I agree
Oh.
that he's 100% correct. Chrono Cross is the best soundtrack of all time.
Some other stuff to talk about with Chrono Trigger though that's like super awesome. In addition, like when I think of that game, I don't think of branching paths and stuff because it's you follow a pretty prescribed route until Chrono dies, and then it's sort of like you can do that or you can resolve that quest or that like thread or not. But the other stuff you're doing is generally going to be the same.
But certainly by the time
there
the
are
endings
some-
roll
yeah,
around,
there
there's
are
so many
different
different
things.
There's
options.
certainly, I don't know. For the time, I think it had some serious choices you could make.
I'm not arguing about like I don't want to say that that's whatever like a bad thing about it. It's just like that's to me that's not what stands out
Sure.
about that game. What stands out about that game
Yeah.
what
Go on.
is the dual and triple text. Like I
those
think
are cool.
I think about that combat system and the way that it really like the way it encourages you to try out different party members and stuff. Actually, this is something I wanted to say about Final Fantasy IV also to backtrack 1 second is that like Final Fantasy IV, normally in these kinds of games, you have like, oh, well, I like these 4 party members, and these are going to be my 4 party members.
Totally.
Even if you have 12 available, right?
Yeah.
And in a game like, say, Final Fantasy VII, where you can just customize any party member to do basically whatever you want, it's hard to like incentivize players to like use different characters. Final Fantasy IV makes you do it by necessity of the narrative, which lets you experiment with like, okay, I have 1 knight and 3 mages, so I have to play differently than if I have my 2 tanks or whatever. Chrono Trigger is interesting in this because it makes you want to try out all the different combinations, right? Where it's like, oh, like Luca learned a new fire spell. I have to get her and Chrono together to like see what they can do.
Yeah.
So I loved the way that seemingly like simple feature really acted as a carrot on a stick for me to like keep leveling up, to keep trying different character combinations and stuff like that, and to try and figure out which 3 characters could work together, which once you get Chrono out of the party, you can get like Magus, Luca, and Robo together to do some like giant, like dark Omega flare.
and
or
it's
something
super
like
cool.
that. It's
The
just like,
Freakos.
also the fact that you can play as Magus in this game is
Yeah.
just
Really
like,
cool.
like this is presented as like your main villain for the first part of the game, and then eventually you just sort of get the option of like, yeah, He can join you if you're willing to screw over Frog.
Have at it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's always on the top of my list for I should go back and replay it. And I've been driving myself insane because I want to buy it on Wii U or just play the DS version, which is great, having the menu on the bottom screen. But then the idea of playing that on that Switch screen is so appealing. I'm probably going to have to wait 3 years for that MF thing. And I'm going to have to play I Am Setsuna just to somehow scratch some part of that itch. But it's not gonna
Yeah,
work.
I've been playing that on the go now, and it scratches that itch a little bit. But Joe was right. It's like, yeah, this is just a pale imitation a lot of the time. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And also just, we talked about it a little bit in the Top 100 meeting, but just I love the personality of Chrono Trigger. Lavos, just a bizarre, abstract villain as a concept, but just on the ground, how silly and lighthearted it is, and just the art and the vibrant nature that entire world comes through so clearly. Just lovely.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the first games to sort of give the player like a hub as well, which is really commonplace in RPGs now. And the End of Time was sort of like, I think that was one of the first times I can recall
That's interesting.
that as a concept for your party.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, so Chrono Trigger popularizing the like New Game Plus idea.
Yep.
Yeah,
Also,
absolutely.
A big deal. Boy.
And we talked to
That game was really
Tokita-san, the co-director of that game over in Japan, which was a real thrill, and talked to him about like, I don't think he's ever gotten this question before. Why don't you guys make another Chrono Trigger? And it's interesting. He said that like ever since Square and Enix merged, there was such a bizarre collaboration between those studios and the Dragon Quest talent and whatnot, that it just has felt holy and sacred since then, and everyone's just kind of scared to touch it. Although they talked about making a movie at some point, maybe. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.